All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Mainly Hoops podcast, where we're continuing on with the SEC transfer portal. We've got Mississippi State we're diving into. If you are liking the content, make sure you like and subscribe. We appreciate all the support. But we'll start with Cody here. Cody, who do you think is the best transfer they got this offseason?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's pretty close, maybe even between three guys, between like Jayden Epps coming from Georgetown, Achor coming from K-State. He barely played there, but was at Samford and had a really good season 2 years ago. And then maybe even Jabori McGee from UAB. I kind of liked what I saw from him. But ultimately, I think I'm going to go with Achor, just kind of for the upside. I mean, there's some unknown here just because we haven't seen much from him at the power conference ranks. Had some success, but just limited minutes. He got dismissed from the program after 7 games. I kind of forget why he got dismissed. I just think he kind of wanted out and they granted his release kind of. But overall, I think on the offensive end, from what I watched on tape, I think he can sort of fill in the Cam Matthews role on the offensive end with potentially a little bit more perimeter shot making upside. I think he's a guy that they're going to be able to use in the dribble handoff game with guys like Hubbard and Jayden Epps. And he displayed like a fairly high level passing ability at times. He had a 13.3 assist rate at Samford, which is pretty damn good for a front court player. He's maybe a little erratic as a passer at times, sort of like Matthews. I think they were kind of similar in that area, like handlers, passers. I saw a lot of similarities, but I think we can consider his passing ability like a plus quality at the SEC level. You know, he can get on the glass and push in transition. Like I think his ability to put the ball on the deck and provide value on the offensive glass, I think overall is going to give him a pretty high floor and just overall just provides a fairly versatile skill set. The perimeter game is like, I mean, he shot at 26 for 59 2 years ago at Samford, but it's just not necessarily high level shooting talent. He's not going to display any movement shooting, any like real off ball qualities. It's going to be more of a pick and pop kind of game and then attack closeouts from there. But overall, I do like his upside and ability to impact the game in multiple areas.
Marcus, who are you going with?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's Epps or Achor. I guess I'm going to go with Epps. I think the thing with him this year is he's going to get to play off the ball more with Hubbard, which I think could be a little bit better for him. Not as much like responsibility. Like he was an okay shooter last year, like 35% from three on pretty high volume, 154 attempts. And like he was 73rd percentile in catch and shoot. Just wasn't very good scoring at the rim, like 48% at the rim. Not great. So I think like he's gonna have less responsibility on that end. But like to Cody's point about Achor, like I based everything off of his numbers 2 years ago at Samford, just because last year was such a small sample size. And like, if you look at the numbers there, you know, like over 10% offensive rebound rate, almost 19% defensive rebound rate, like near 9% block rate. Andy shot it pretty well on low volume, but I think that like there's some upside there, like much like Cody said. There's just a lot of unknown, right? It looks like, you know, I just did a quick search. Like it looks like he was dismissed for conduct detrimental to the team. You know, that's actually, I think, the second player in 2 years that Kansas State has had dismissed. So I don't know, like, what's going on there, if that's just kind of like a pattern at Kansas State. But, yeah, I guess, like, I'm going to say it's Epps, but I think that there are a lot of guys that you could probably go with here.
Yeah, Cody, are there any other transfers that stand out or just guys you want to talk about in general?
Yeah, I mean, I think Epps is mostly important to this offense for kind of taking some pressure off of Josh Hubbard, especially as a ball handler and as a playmaker, advantage creator, just like perimeter shot maker. I think this Hubbard hasn't really had a ton of help in that area. I know we had Claudia Harris and Kugel last year, but they're not really like great on-ball shooters, not great pick-and-roll operators like Epps is. I do think these two can kind of work off of each other. It might be a little bit odd on the defensive end just because they're both pretty small guards, but I think on the offensive end, Epps being able to take the pressure off of Hubbard will be pretty big. But One guy that, I sort of liked the more I watched film wise, was Jabari McGee. I mean, he's probably going to come off the bench, maybe potentially leaking into Jayden Epps minutes. Like, I think he can potentially get the 20 to 25 minutes a game. There's not really going to be any lineups that all three of those guards play together just because they're all pretty small overall. But McGee is the best physical presence of the three. He's looking to get downhill, to score at the rim. He was a 65th percentile rim scorer with 46.2% of his field goal attempts coming at that area, at the rim, which is in the 93rd percentile, which is pretty ridiculous for a 6'1" listed guard, and had a 35% free throw rate as well, which is really good at that position. He's one thing that was interesting was his catch and shoot ability. He only shot at 28 for 68 from three last year, but I was kind of surprised at the limited volume from behind the arc overall, because I do think he has a high consistent release with not a ton of moving parts, knocked it down at a 41% clip in his only season of Division I hoops so far. He was a JUCO guy before. So I do think there's a little bit of extra potential in there to be a better catch and shoot option. And I think he's going to need to be if he wants to play bigger minutes for Chris Jans next season. I also think he can provide some stuff on the defensive end. I mean, he was always like the best defensive. Well, he at UAB last year, he had a 0 defensive box plus minus, but I mean, he played for UAB's 229th ranked defense in the country. I mean, he was second on the team in this metric, just behind Yaxel Lendeborg, who is a great two-way impact. He had a 2.3% steal rate for a defense that ranked 306th in turnover rate forced overall, which is a great sign. It shows that his playmaking qualities can play up in pretty much any system. So I do think he fits the mold as a two-way guard in the Chris Jans system that is kind of starting to emphasize being more balanced and being good on both sides of the ball.
Marcus, what are your thoughts on these other transfers?
Yeah, I do like McGee, like Cody said, but I wanted to mention like Quincy Ballard real quick, coming from Wichita State, non-shooter, not a creator on the offensive end at all, but really impactful on the boards, like 12% offensive rebound rate, 23% defensive rebound rate, over 7% block rate, shot at 81% at the rim last year on 155 attempts. Like, if you watch the film, he finishes really well, like through contact. Guys are kind of like just hanging off of him, and he does a pretty good job there. And then the other one is Amir Ali, coming over from Arizona State. He was a freshman there last year. Like, minutes were very inconsistent, and like if you listen to any of our content throughout the last year, like, Arizona State was something of a disaster. You just, like, you never really knew what you were going to get, who was going to play night to night, who was, like, what was even going on. But he had like a decent year there. When he played, like, his numbers weren't horrible. He had a really nice game at Texas Tech, 18 points on 6 of 7 shooting, 7 boards. I think that there's some upside here. Coming in as a second-year guy, should get a little bit more opportunity. Wasn't an overly efficient scorer for the most part last year. Okay shooter, like 33%. But I do think that, like, there's some potential upside here with Ali.
Can we maybe just do a quick prediction, ceiling and a floor for, way too early prediction, but a ceiling and a floor for Mississippi State? Cody, we'll go with you.
Yeah, it's kind of hard for me to say if this team got better or worse last year. Like, I really liked them at the beginning of the year, and then as the year went on, I started to not like their defense as much, and the shooting never really came along. So it kind of feels like a wash. I think there's a little bit more offensive upside with this group, especially depending on what Achor and Jabari McGee provide, plus the 4-star freshmen coming in. They brought in 4 of them. So I'm not really sure what they're going to provide just yet. I'll have a better idea closer to the year. But for the group that they have right now, for the core that they have, I'm willing to say they're pretty similar, maybe a tad worse, just because the defensive end with the lineups they're going to throw out there with Hubbard and Epps and McGee, if they want to play a 3-guard lineup, which I don't really think is going to happen. It just kind of leads for not disaster potential, but just to not have a typical Chris Jans defense that really harps on having like length on the wing, and it is a rim denial scheme, having like solid recovery skills, having solid playmaking ability, shot blocking ability. I just don't really think they have that on the perimeter just yet. So for right now, I'm going to say they got slightly worse, like a fringe tournament team right now. I think they're probably leaning towards being in, though.
Marcus, what's your prediction?
I think this team fully embodies a bubble team. Like,
as they do all the time, right?
As they do every year, but I think like it's just what they are, and like for the most part, unless they like catch lightning in a bottle one season, they're a bubble team. And that's just kind of how I see it. Like they have some solid players on both ends of the floor, and they're going to compete in the SEC. They're going to win big games at home. They'll win a game or two on the road that they probably shouldn't, and they'll probably make the tournament as like a 10 or 11 seed. That's how I see it. I think they're like a little bit worse than last year. But I think they're right there, like right on the edge of the tournament.
Any final thoughts before we wrap up the Bulldogs?
Not really. I guess I just to touch on like Amir Ali and Brandon Walker, like especially Brandon Walker, I'm a little bit concerned about how he's going to fit in. He was like a very high usage, like front court offensive hub for Montana State the last 2 years. He had a 36% usage rate last season, which I believe was tied for second in the nation for usage rate. It's just not something that's going to happen here. And when you lack off the ball qualities, when you need to play more in that area, when you have guys like Hubbard, Achor, and Epps, I just don't really see it working out. He's not great on the glass and doesn't shoot it all that well. And he's not really going to provide any defensive impact at the 5, which is kind of his natural position, more of a below the rim guy. So I don't really see how he fits in. Maybe some spot minutes. Maybe if a guy goes down, he can kind of fill in as a more offensive centric big. But I don't really see how he's going to fit in all that well. Amir Ali, like you mentioned, I think he's going to play more spot minutes, fill in more on like a matchup basis as well. Like when Sean Jones is like kind of schemed out of a game as a shooter, and you just need a little bit more of an offensive punch. I think that's when they're going to go to a guy like Amir Ali at the 3.
Marcus, any final thoughts from you?
No, I mean, I think this team just has some unknown, right? Like I think like Achor hasn't really played in a couple of years. Ali's coming from a weird situation where he like his minutes were up and down, and so I think there's just some unknown here. But no, I think like I said, Mississippi State is just a fringe tournament team.
All right. As always, thank you for listening to the Mainly Hoops podcast.